Is it bad that when I first read this title, I thought it was going to be discussing the issue of restrooms and gender? Huh? Get it? Stall? Yeah, never mind.
We've seen tremendous progress over the last 40 or 50 years in women moving towards equality with men. What I wanted to find out is, has this movement towards gender equality stalled?
So, what caused you to ask that particular question? Maybe it's just the English major in me, but asking if it has stalled is a very specific descriptor. So, I assume you would cite some kind of instigating evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, that caused you to pursue that question. I think a more objective starting point might be to ask, how has the rate of gender equality progressed over the last 50 years? Because it sounds like you framed the question having already presumed a conclusion.
So I gathered indicators from a lot of different government data to get a big picture of what's happening with gender inequality over the last 40 or 50 years, and what do the trends look like.
Okay, statistics time. Educate me.
So the first thing I wanted to look at is how much education men and women are getting. And this is the big success story of gender equality. It used to be that men got more bachelor's degrees than women. Now, more bachelor's degrees every year are given to women than men.
Okay, sure, but the prime question always is, bachelor's degrees in what subjects?
In doctoral degrees, women are still a little bit behind men, but they're getting close to getting half of them.
Doctorate degrees in what?
So the next thing I looked at was, what fields are men and women studying? What are they majoring in college? That's important because what you major in has a lot to do with what job you get.
Ah, a breath of fresh air. Asking the pertinent questions. Okay, this is more promising now. Also, I have to note that whoever made this video placed some kind of egg-shaped highlighting around the speaker's head at various points in the video. That is not my doing. That is how it was when I found it.
So I looked at trends in the degree of sex segregation of college majors.
Segregation. Most definitions of that word involve the forced separation of groups from one another. Are you saying the genders have no choice in what subjects they take? Or are you meaning it as just another way of saying divided or separated? Again, maybe it's just my oversensitivity to grammar.
There's a measure, an index of dissimilarity, it's called. That index, computed across all the fields of study, takes on the highest value of 100, hypothetically, if every single field was either all men or all women. That index takes on the lowest value, 0, if every field is fully integrated. And what I mean by integrated is, if women were 52% of all the people getting bachelor's degrees in that year, they would be exactly 52% of every field.
Whoa, 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 whoa. 52% of bachelor degrees means 52% of bachelor degrees in every field? I must be misunderstanding something here. If you have 100 students, and 52 of them are female and 48 of them are male, and all the males take biology, and all the females take chemistry, and everyone gets a bachelor's degree in their chosen field, women would account for 52% of bachelor degrees and 0% of biology degrees. Are you looking for there to be a total equality of outcome? Seriously, if someone has a saner interpretation of what she just said, please leave it in the comments.
So what I found was that segregation of fields of college study declined a lot. You can see it on the graph between 1970 and the middle 80s. Thereafter, it's been flat. There's been no progress since the middle 80s. So this is a real clear example of the stalling out of progress towards gender equality in what people are studying in college.
Okay, but why is that though? What factors might be causing that?
The next thing I looked at is the simple question, Are women employed or not? Because we know this is the big change of the gender revolution. And you can see on this graph that starting in the 60s, women's employment goes up dramatically. It goes up dramatically in the 70s, continues to go up in the 80s. Then, starting somewhere around 1990, it really plateaus. So since about 1990, women's employment has hovered at about 70% of women are employed, compared to 80 or 90% of men. That's a high level compared to before, but it's been pretty flat and hasn't grown more.
But why? Why might that be? Your graph stops around 2009. Did anything happen to the job market around that time, by any chance?
So the next thing I looked at was how sex segregated are jobs, the jobs people actually work at in the economy. What you can see about segregation of jobs is that it declined substantially in the 70s and in the 80s and in the early 90s. But since then, there's been almost no progress. So this too is a stalling out of progress towards equality.
Almost no progress? So there has been some. And again, why might this be? Do you have any ideas on what's behind these numbers?
So the next thing that I wanted to look at, you could see as kind of the bottom line. How much money do people earn? After all, that's one big part of why they have jobs. The sex gap in pay really only started closing about 1980. And in just a 10-year period, between about 1980 and about 1990, women went from earning about 60% of what men did to earning about 70%. So a 10 percentage point increase in just 10 years. But in the ensuing 20 years, there was much less change.
Wait, what? That line keeps going up. And it dipped around 2009. Gee, you would almost think that there was some kind of, I don't know, catastrophic economic event that occurred around that time. Why won't you tackle the question of why?
So my conclusion is that on a wide variety of indicators, progress towards gender equality has slowed down.
But why?
So for those people who care about gender equality, who think it's important, what could we do about this?
Well, that's a little passive-aggressive. For those people that care about this. I guess you're just a saint for having done this work, aren't you?
One thing that could help on the governmental level is stringent enforcement of the laws we already have on the book about employment discrimination. I think that enforcement may have gotten more lax in recent decades, and that might be part of the problem.
You think that enforcement has become lax, and that might be part of the problem. Well, has enforcement been lax, or hasn't it? And what problem? You have not identified a problem. You've only shown statistical trends. You haven't shown or even suggested any reasons behind them. The reasons might be completely nefarious and require action, or they might be completely benign. By what logic do you think to propose a solution to a problem when you haven't proven there's a problem? And if you're not even certain about the existence of flaws in or the efficacy of the solution you are suggesting, then why are you suggesting it?
Thinking of employers and what they could possibly do, it seems that jobs are not very flexible and very family-friendly.
It seems.
It's almost as if every employer assumes that every worker, male and female, should have a housewife at home. But of course, most men don't and most women don't.
It's almost as if every employer assumes. Do you have any data to back that up? Do you have any proof to offer for that assertion? Or are you a mind reader?
Some family-friendly policies that might help would be flexible hours, more ability to work at home, being able to take parental leave, things like that.
Some family-friendly policies that might help. That might help. What about employees that are single? What about employees that don't have kids? Why focus on family-friendly policies? Just curious.
In the family, women's roles have changed a lot. They're both parents and employed workers. Men's roles have changed a little bit, but not as much. So I think we may need more change in men's contribution to the household before women's careers can take off more.
Men's roles have changed, but not as much. As much as what? How have they changed? Why is men changing necessary for women to thrive? Women cannot succeed on their own? They need men's help? Or are you saying men are hindering women in the household? If so, how? And by what method are you measuring all of this? The speaker is a professor of sociology and the director of graduate studies at New York University. I can only hope that informative portions of her presentation were edited out of this video, and that she did not just give us a series of statistics out of context and then push governmental, private sector, and social reforms on us without justification or proof of necessity. Because if not, I'm not sure her students are getting their money's worth. As always, thanks for watching.